Richie Allen.
And she became involved in the investigation of child abuse in 1989 whilst carrying out a search of a suspect's premises. There they found hard drugs and child pornography in video and photographic form. Some of it looked ritualistic. A lot of this is going to make sense to you, hearing what we heard from David Icke last night. The subject was involved with a company, a big technology company, and was engaged in research at a building transfer of biological weapons data to Iraq. And I could go on and on and on to tell this story, but I'm going to bring her on herself to talk about it. She's a truly remarkable woman, talking to us from an undisclosed location. It's a real honour to welcome Andrea Davison to the show. Andrea, welcome to the programme. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine and delighted to be on your show, Richie.
Listen, the pleasure is all ours. I don't know if you caught any of David's chat with me last night. You might not have done because of where you are. It's on YouTube today. But your name came up in it a few times. You probably won't be surprised to hear. Do you want to talk to us about North Wales? Do you want to start off talking about that and what you uncovered there?
Well, in a way, Richie, everything seems to have come full circle today. In the late 80s and 90s, we were investigating Dolphin Square, Pie, John Allen's child abuse empire, and the cover-up, the involvement of the police, the courts, Parliament in a cover-up. And it seems that all the things that we investigated then and tried to expose then are actually coming back full circle today. I mean, every day I'm reading more and more in the news about matters that we exposed 25 years ago. It's remarkable, really.
I said that to David last night. I said the same thing. You must feel vindicated in one way, and another way it must feel very weird and bizarre that all of these things that you said were going on, that you were talking about, you were investigating, are now in the public domain. Talk to us about how the methods they used, Andrea, when you were coming across this information. How difficult did they make it for you to get it out there, and how did they block these investigations?
I was arrested several times. I was invited to the Attorney General's office and arrested there. Basically, they were trying to do everything they could to cover it up. Of course, being arrested was the least of the crimes that they committed to cover it up. Many people didn't survive. They used all sorts of methods, the courts, the police, covert surveillance. They drove some people crazy, obviously, with tailing them everywhere, tapping their phones, trying to ruin them financially. Financial deprivation was a key tool in their arsenal of persecution. Basically, what has never really come out is that it isn't just child abuse being committed by perverts. It's $1 billion industry.
Yeah, it
and
is, yeah.
John Allen, you see people get arrested for having hundreds of thousands or thousands of child abuse images and videos, even snuff videos. There's never an investigation into their finances. People are convicted. There's no investigation into their finances. And this is one of the crucial avenues that needs to be explored by everyone, because this industry, this $1 billion industry, really needs to be stopped. And the only way to do that is to actually investigate the finances. When John Allen, who ran the 11 children's homes in North Wales, he was connected with Howard, and they've both been convicted. He ran companies which produced videos, but there was no investigation into this company or the profits they produced. And this is something I'm very, very keen to have happen now, an investigation into the finances and the profits from this industry. I mean, forced prostitution of children is profitable. I know we're seeing this terribly again in Rotherham, Derby, Nottingham, around the country.
Do you know what's incredible? What's incredible, Andrea, and listening to David last night and listening to you now, is how blatant they were with their activity. They weren't worried about getting caught, these people. It never seemed to bother them that, you know, it was known. It was known in certain towns who was doing it, which MPs were doing it, which former minister. They didn't seem to spend too much time worrying about getting caught.
Absolutely, Richie. The point is, this was an open secret in Parliament. It was an open secret in Parliament in 1990. I know that for definite. I was working with Tony Blair and Geoffrey Dickens at that time in 1990. And it was a totally open secret. The list of names of the people who knew about this, they didn't just know about it and cover it up. They didn't stop it. That is the worst thing. They can use all these excuses about how, well, we're protecting the system and the country and the establishment. But if that was true, they would have stopped it. They didn't stop any of these people from raping and abusing and murdering children. They just covered it up every time.
Why did they do that? Why did they cover it up, do you think? It might sound like a stupid question now, but why do you think they turned a blind eye to it? The ones who didn't do it, why did they ignore it?
Well, I can understand to an extent, because I know what you risked in those days trying to expose it. You risked the loss of everything you owned, you risked your reputation, you risked everything because they would set you up one way or another, or they would take you out. So it was a risk, but the point is they were very powerful people. I mean, if you just think about some of the people who knew, not to mention, as I said, the people who were actually involved in it, clearly they didn't want to stop it. But people like Neil Kinnock, John Major, Thatcher, Howard, Ken Livingstone, Doug Coyle, Ken Clark, William Hague. I mean, they all knew. And that's just a small amount. John Mann MP, he knew. He tried to do something.
They all deny it, don't they, to this day?
Now.
Just to make the point, excuse me, not to cut across you, but they all deny it to this day. I mean, Hague is a very interesting one because Hague can't really expect people to believe, considering his position as Welsh Secretary. He can't expect anybody to believe that he didn't know what was happening there. He must have known. Well, of course.
It's absolutely impossible not to have known. Let's put it this way, everybody knew. Everybody knew. They knew, the judges knew, the top police knew, if not quite a lot of other police officers obviously lower down, they all knew. MPs knew, the government knew, of course they knew, the whips knew. It was really not secret. It wasn't secret at all. It was, as I said, an open secret.
Now, Andrea, can I just ask you? Sorry, can I just ask you when? At what point did you get a tap on the shoulder where somebody said to you, "Listen, you've got a good job now. You're looking into areas that are none of your business. Why don't you feck off and mind your business?" At what point did that happen?
In actual fact, it didn't happen in exactly that way, Richie. At the time, I was very important because of my work with Iraq and Arms to Iraq. And therefore, because of that, I was actually protected. And what do I have to say? I know that there are some people in the intelligence services very notably who've been involved in all of this. But as I say, if you know the name of the intelligence service, it isn't actually an intelligence service. But there are a lot of good people who have not liked this for a very, very long time and have tried to stop it. And I believe are trying to stop it now. But because of my position with Arms to Iraq, they would only go so far. I was too important a witness as far as the Trade and Industry Select Committee and Sir Richard Scott went, for them to actually go to stop me. They couldn't actually totally stop me. But I didn't do as much as I would have liked to, because I was fully aware that if I went too far, the people who were protecting me would no longer be able to. And I'm sure that's a position that other people have been in.
You know, we haven't even begun. We're going to get into Baroness Butler Sloss and Fiona Woolf and all of that in a minute, because I'm not going to tell anybody where you are, but you must be, shaking your head in disbelief at what Theresa May's been doing. But before we get into that, we've mentioned the establishment figures and we've mentioned the MPs and all these people who maybe weren't participating in it but knew about it. But there's another thing which really bugs me, Andrea, and that is the BBC coming out now and playing these videos of these men who had these horrible things done to them, and the BBC are trying to act like they're breaking ground, that this is great journalism. They must have known, senior journalists at the BBC for years, they must have known what was going on. They must have as well.
Well, I think as everybody's well aware now, the BBC is primarily state-run and financed propaganda, and therefore they were most certainly at that time, to my knowledge, covering up a paedophile ring within their own ranks.
Of course.
So there was absolutely no possibility that the BBC were going to assist at all in exposing it back in the 90s. They were always well known that you'd have to be careful what you said to them anyway, because they were running back to their handlers in MI5 with the information. So a lot of the time you had to be very careful when people asked you to provide information, because you didn't know if they were simply gathering it up in order to actually damage your sources or find out who was giving you that information and actually get a link back to them. You had to be so careful. And I think people still do have to be careful, because there are people out there pretending to help who are actually just looking for information.
Do you know what kills me when I hear these stories? When I was listening to David last night and I'm listening to you now, can you imagine some of the families who found out what was going on? Maybe they found out at the end when their child maybe wasn't being abused anymore. Maybe they found out after the fact and they realised that there wasn't anything they could do because no policeman or woman wanted to know. Nobody was going to be investigated. How helpless must those parents have felt, knowing that judges, barristers, MPs were buggering their children and there's nothing they could do about it? How must they have felt, Andrea?
My heart goes out to them, it really does. I mean, I'm the victim myself of persecution, but these people, but at least I have a background, I understand what's happening. These people must be devastated when their child is so terribly abused and there is no one to turn to. And in fact, the mothers have been arrested, the fathers have been arrested, the victims have been arrested, whilst they watched their abusers walk up and down the street, talking to police officers who were their friends. It must be it's just heartbreaking, Richie. This whole thing about child abuse is heartbreaking. It destroys a nation. If we cannot look after our children, what future does a nation have?
There's a million questions coming in for you. By the way, tweet after tweet after tweet of people saying, what a wonderful woman you are for doing what you did, despite the personal implications for you. I will second that. I said to you today on Skype, I think you're extraordinary. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I think you're an amazing woman. Really good question coming in. I've had an email in, and it's from a woman who says her name is Sandra, and she says she was abused, but she would never talk about it. She says in her email, it's a long email, at any time did you begin to question your own sanity when you were uncovering this stuff?
No, not really. I think I never really questioned my own sanity because of the fact that I was involved with people who knew all about this. So they were wonderful intelligence officers, and I had my own controller who was a wonderful, wonderful man, and I could always ask them. I think when it actually came to the satanic ritual abuse, I did sometimes question the nature of it all and the horror of it all. Could this really be true? You know, but as an investigator, you just go from one fact to another, and my priority was to find a way to help these children to stop it happening again. And unfortunately, Richie, we sort of thought that the Waterhouse, an inquiry, a public inquiry, would fit that bill. I mean, how wrong we were.
Yeah,
really.
but who could blame you though? I mean, you're an intelligent person. I'm reasonably intelligent. I think at the time, of course, you're bound to think. I mean, your whole, I suppose, perception of everything was being challenged at that time. Up until that point, we all believed these people wouldn't do these things to us. We all believed in justice. We all believed in wrongs being righted. Of course, you just touched on the satanic stuff there. Again, this is the aspect of it that David mentioned last night. So few people can get their heads around. Now, this was massive, this satanic, ritualistic aspect to it, and I suppose you can understand, Andrea, that even to this day, so many people, they struggle to come to terms with that because it's far out for them. But yet, it happened on a massive scale.
Absolutely. I mean, I can totally appreciate people who don't believe in snuff movies. You know, I totally appreciate people being so concerned that they can't face these things. It takes time, and you have to actually have the evidence before you. You have to see and hear it over and over and over again before you can really fit it into the picture and say, well, look, I have to look at all of this because there is only one way to stop all these things from going on. There's only one way to save these children and to stop it happening to children in the future. And that is to look at very, very uncomfortable and very, very horrible things and say, well, people are capable of anything. I mean, we've had, there's been gas chambers, there's been wars, there's been Cambodia, there's been all of these things, there's been Rwanda. People are capable of the most terrible things. So to just think that they're not capable of organising child abuse or even satanic abuse is rather naive, isn't it?
It's ridiculously naive. Let's talk about the Dickens dossier given to then Home Secretary Leon Britton. Again, I get really annoyed and angry with people whom, will say, oh, that's ridiculous, that satanic stuff, that's all made up by David Icke and people like that. But then they think that, coincidences happen, you just lose documents like that. You can just misplace a list of names of high-profile child abusers. Andrea, it couldn't happen in a gazillion years. If you're the Home Secretary and a man hands you a list and says, some very, very important people are doing some absolutely horrific things to children. Not only do you not lose that list, but you make copies of it. You go straight to the police. Ludicrous to think that the guy lost or misplaced the list. Madness, I think. What do you think?
It's absolutely ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, the Wanless inquiry is bizarre. I mean, according to Mr. Wanless, he wasn't DV cleared. That's positively vetted, which means that really, basically, anyone from NMI5 could say, no, we don't have that document, because they could legally say that, because it would be illegal for them to give the document to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clearly, it's as ludicrous as Wolf and Butler's loss. The whole thing is a terrific waste of taxpayers' money, and it actually achieves only one good thing, which is, and that good thing is only for those people who are paedophiles and who want to cover this whole thing up. That's all it achieves. There is not a shred of truth in the summations. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, MI5 and SB, or special branches they were, I believe they're called something else now, of course they've got copies. That's absolutely ludicrous. They'll be held in records. They have a records department. All they will have to do is go and get those records out of it.
Simple as that. It's all there, isn't it? Not that, anymore we need the list. I mean, we know, I mean, I certain of them, some of them are still alive. I'm going to do the decent thing. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm not going to name them on this programme. But, I mean, we know. I mean, we had that farcical situation when Philip Schofield passed David Cameron the list on ITV. Again, I don't give ITV any credit for it. They were way behind the loop. David Icke with you, and you coming to David Icke with that information all those years ago, are way, way ahead of these people in terms of bringing it out there. But what a farcical situation that was. Schofield handing Cameron that list with the names visible there. We know who these people are. It's incredible, Andrea. You know, it goes right to the heart of Westminster. Seriously powerful people.
Absolutely. And I think really that a vast amount of people are fully aware of that fact now, you know. And what we knew, we've known for all these years, over 25 years, at least from my experience. And I mean, Jeffrey Dickens was involved before me.
You went to a school. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. You went to a school where Savile was abusing girls. I mean, you knew all about that, didn't you? I mean, you did everything you could to bring that out.
Can you repeat that?
Sorry, yeah. You went to a school where Jimmy Savile had been abusing girls at that school.
At Duncroft, yeah. My knowledge of this started when I was a child, when I was sentenced by the court at 13 years old to 3 years in Duncroft Approved School for the very great crime of being drunk.
Jesus.
The men who gave me the alcohol were not even questioned. And so I saw it very much from the inside in those days, and I certainly learned a great deal from the children that were there with me, because I was a child myself. It's a terribly traumatic experience to be torn from your parents and put with abusive people. Some of the remand homes in those days were just the most appallingly abusive and cruel places to put children. So yes, I did start very early, and when I found the information concerning the abuse going on in North Wales, and I found the videos and the photographic evidence, I couldn't stand back from it, Richie. I thought about myself as a child, and I thought, this has been going on all these years.
Yeah, all those decades.
It's going to go on if we don't stand up and do something about it. So,
tell us about Jeffrey Dickens and your connection to him, because he's so central to what's been happening in the last 18 months or so.
Well, during the time when I was working with Tony Blair, who allegedly wanted to uncover the police corruption and child abuse in North Wales, I was also working with Jeffrey Dickens at the same time. He was a very interesting character. He was larger than life, and because of my involvement, I was very interested in Pi. If you actually research the child abuse in North Wales, John Allen, he was at the head of the Bryn Allen community, and Allen and Howarth, another paedophile, who worked together, but Howarth had a connection with Peter Wrighton. They both worked in a children's home in Kent together. So the connection between North Wales, Wrighton, Pi, and Westminster, and also, of course, obviously Dolphin Square, was very powerful. And so I wanted to benefit from Jeffrey Dickens' knowledge on Pi, particularly, because it was something that I wanted to work on. And later, much later, I co-wrote an article for Spiked, which was a magazine after Scallywag, and about Pi and the Home Office. And some of that information came from Jeffrey Dickens. So Jeffrey kindly passed to me very secretly some documents of his whilst I was doing research. This, of course, at the time, I didn't think anything very much of these papers. Apart from that, they were interesting. They confirmed a lot of things we suspected. And they went in with the rest of them. I took copies of most documents. And they just went in with the rest of my evidence. After the Waterhouse inquiry was established in 1996, we actually were threatened with contempt of court if we revealed any of the names of important people, particularly MPs. And so basically, we believed at that time that having established the Waterhouse inquiry, something was going to happen. We were going to change everything. That child abuse was going to be on the menu. People would no longer say, oh, no, you can't talk about that. Because of that, a lot of my things were put in boxes, as it were. That's sort of a metaphysical way of putting it. And I just kept them. And in 2010, January 2010, my whole home was raided. And they took every document out of my house. And it included a box with all the child abuse evidence in, and all the arms to Iraq evidence. I thought nothing, I thought they were after the arms to Iraq evidence. At that time, no child abuse hadn't been talked about. The Westminster paedophile ring hadn't been talked about for some length of time. I since found out, of course, that they were investigating Jim Savile and Duncroft, of course, and I'd been a Duncroft girl. They were investigating Jim Savile, and as D.C. Winnard put it to me, he said, we're just tying up loose ends. And I realise now they were actually getting rid of as much difficult people as they possibly could, and they wanted the documents.
To bury them, effectively.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, you have no evidence. They come in, they take every document out of the house. What evidence do you have that they've stolen documents from child abuse? Absolutely none. You know, because they don't give you a list of the documents they've taken. They don't leave you with any proof. So I didn't have any evidence until recently, because when I left for South America, I left my 2 vehicles outside my property. And these were stolen by 2 people that I knew. Not only that, they went into the house and they stole a lot of valuable property, anything they could get their hands on. And they also stole keys to a secure lockup. The lockup was where I had the originals, my diaries, the originals from Jeffrey Dickens, letters from Tony Blair, things like that. And they're being looked after by a third party. Now, some of these documents eventually turned up in the hands of the CPS in Yorkshire.
Now, for our American listeners now, this is the Crown Prosecution Service. It's like the district attorney in the United States of America. So that's where these documents have ended up now. Go ahead, Andrea.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, in a Crown Prosecution Service. And I found out that the Yorkshire Police the West Yorkshire Police had conspired with the thieves to steal the documents. And they also allowed the thieves to keep both my vehicles and all the property they'd stolen. Anyway, my solicitor bravely went to court to get a court order for my Land Rover to be returned to me, which is one of the vehicles they'd stolen. After the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Government Service, had scanned some of the documents which had been stolen to my solicitor. So he got a court order in March this year for the Land Rover to be returned, but the police refused to give the address of the thief who had stolen it or where the vehicle was. Eventually, they admitted that it was a farm in St Albans, and they gave the email address of the thief. But that was all, and he just didn't bother replying to my lawyers. And funny enough, Richie, it was over the weekend. Ian Puddock, who you'll probably all know, is a veteran in exposing police corruption.
He was on the show last week. He was on with us last week. Yeah, he was. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Anyway, Ian went to look for the Land Rover because we were saying yes, maybe they'd left some of the documents, maybe even a page of the Dickens dossier in the Land Rover. Let's go and find out. So Ian went to Hammond Farm in St Albans, and he actually found my Land Rover. And it had been stripped, absolutely stripped. The wheels had been replaced with cheap wheels. The towing gear, the military towing gear, had been taken off. You know, the roof rack had gone. Bits were missing. The passenger seat was missing. Ian took photos of it all. And inside, where they allegedly, the thieves had said they had put all the property that they had taken from, they had, or they didn't admit to taking it, that they had of mine and the person who was looking after documents for me. There was just nothing. Rubbish. old cans, plastic bags. It was wrecked. It was a total wreck. It had been left outside for 2 years. So the police had conspired with these thieves to steal 2 vehicles, a lot of property, and basically all to get hold of documents on child abuse.
And, there's no other conclusion. Even, the most sceptical person in the world has to draw that conclusion. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes left, and I wanted to get to something which is really important. That people really need to understand this, just how filthy and blatant the corruption goes in this country. Talk to us about Nicholas Parry.
I'm sorry, Richie, you just went a little bit
I just went a bit,
there.
there's a bit of distance between us, all right. No, I want you to talk about Nicholas Parry and your encounters with him over the years and in court.
Oh, yeah. Nick Parry, yes, right. Well, I first came into contact with Nick Parry during the Waterhouse inquiry. I was representing some of the victims because what I'd done is I'd trained as a mental health advocate, and because of this, I ended up representing some of the victims. I don't know if the listeners know what a mental health advocate is, but it's somebody who basically will just do whatever the person with mental health difficulties wants them to do. It was a charity funded by Sainsbury's, so it had no links to council, nothing. So you just do what your client asks you to do. And of course, many of the children, as they grew up, of course, they did have mental health difficulties. Well, you would, wouldn't you? You've been abused like that, yeah? So now Nick Parry, who was a solicitor at the time, he was representing some of the accused. And let's be plain about this. These people were accused of systematic rape, abuse, and violence towards the children in their care. In 11 children's homes, they were accused of prostituting them out of those children's homes. They were accused of those vile things. And he was representing them. And I couldn't believe it, that when, after the police had taken all my documents and then they decided to charge me, and this was about 2 years afterwards, the judge was then, this solicitor, Nick Parry.
He was sitting in judgment of you.
Crown Court judge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you believe it? A Crown Court judge. I don't know how often solicitors are made into Crown Court judges, but normally I think they're barristers who are made into Crown Court judges.
Well, just for our listeners who might not understand that, I don't have the knowledge of the law that Andrea does, but as a journalist in newsrooms for years, I do know that he should never have sat on the bench for Andrea's case. He should have what they call recused himself because of a conflict of interest. The fact that he got to sit in judgment of your case, it doesn't get any more filthy and corrupt and seedy than that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I understand he was made a Crown Court judge 2 months after I'd been arrested, and he's sat on my trial. And I mean, he's never asked, the CPS about a list of documents, or, in other words, he's ideal for them. It's an ideal cover-up merchant for them, because he will never ask them about the documents or why they stole why they colluded in the theft of my Land Rover. I mean, my solicitor didn't get a court order from Nick Parry to have my Land Rover returned. He had to go to another judge. I mean, it's incestuous, when you get involved with child abuse, it is absolutely incestuous. They have their people in key positions in the courts, in the CPS, in the police, in Parliament, They have their key people everywhere. And of course, there is still some justice in the British justice system. I mean, it's getting less and less every day. But when they want to go for somebody, they have all the people to call in.
Of course they do. David Icke said to me today, he said, first of all, he said, I'm delighted that you've invited Andrea on. But he also said, and we are kind of running out of time, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. He also said, no serious inquiry into institutional paedophilia, satanic Satan worship and paedophilia should take place in this country without all charges or convictions against you dropped and you being allowed back into your country. And I think he's absolutely right to say that. Do you think that'll happen? Do you want it to happen?
I really do. Thank you very much for saying that. I really want to give evidence to this inquiry. I have been involved in this, as I said, from being 13 years old, but seriously involved in exposing it for over 25 years. And I would very much like my evidence back from the CPS so that can be used and to help. And also, of course, I would like, my copy of the papers that Jeffrey Dickens gave me. I'd like those back as well. And I do want to do everything I can to bring justice for these children and to expose this network. Once and for all, let's expose it. Let's actually get the truth out. And I want the cover-up merchants prosecuted, Richie. Not just the abusers, but all those people who deliberately have covered up and profited from those cover-ups because they were the ones who got promoted. That's why you get senior police officers who are involved, because they get promoted. Senior judges, they get promoted. And politicians, we have to stop this corruption in our country. We have to move forward, clean it out, and start to give justice for the British people.
You're a special woman, Andrea. Thanks very much for coming on the programme and talking to us. It kind of brings us right up on time. Thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for coming on today at short notice. We would have asked you anyway eventually, but in light of David doing what he did last night, it was important to get you on tonight. You are special. I don't patronise people. I won't forget this conversation for a long time. Look after yourself and stay in touch with us and keep us updated with anything that you think is of interest to us, and we'll always broadcast it.
Excellent, Richie, and bless you and all the listeners, and thank you for listening.
Richie Allen.